You are listening to the Done with Dieting podcast, episode number 20. Hi, I'm Elizabeth Sherman, former corporate high-tech executive turned life and weight loss coach. But it doesn't seem like it was that long ago that I was searching for that perfect diet. You know, the one that would finally be the magic pill to lose the weight that I so desired. Fast forward past tons of failed diets, endless hours of exercise, and painful lessons learned. And although I still have not reached the state of nirvana body love bliss that I truly desire, my relationship with food, exercise, and my body is infinitely better than it was not only when I started this journey, but even as recently as 3 years ago. This journey has allowed me to ditch my scale, stop logging my food and exercise, eat food that wasn't prepared by me, and I can easily maintain my weight, something that I never thought was possible. I created the Done with Dieting podcast to give you simple, easy to do, and sustainable strategies and ideas to help you do the exact same thing without all of the drama that I went through. If you're a woman who's looking to create a better relationship with food, exercise, and her body, get off the diet roller coaster and free up all of that headspace spent on calories, how you look, what you should eat, and beating yourself up for not doing what you think you should be doing, you are in the right place. Let's get started. Hey everyone, I have an extra special guest on the podcast today, and I'd like to introduce you to my client, Annie. I knew immediately when I decided to start the podcast that I wanted to have Annie on as a guest because her journey before us working together is going to sound so freaking familiar to you. It's the story of going on a diet, getting some success, only to not be able to maintain that success. And then the frustration that goes along with that, us asking ourselves, what is wrong with me that I can't make this happen? I wanted to have Annie share her story with you because she is an example of what is possible. And so I want you to be inspired about what can happen when you don't give up, when giving up just isn't an option. So keep listening and tune in to be inspired. Here we go. All right, everyone. I would love for you to meet my client, Annie. So Annie, tell us a little bit about you, your history with dieting and weight loss and weight gain.
Hi, Elizabeth. I'm excited to be here. I'm honored. I've never done anything like this before. So, I am 46, going on 47. I would tell you that I have been in what I call a prison of, weight loss, weight gain, probably since I was 18, 19. And that's as far back as I can remember being aware of my weight, getting on a scale, thinking about weight, looking at other women, looking at myself, comparing, all that stuff. Like so many other people, I've been through a variety of, try this, try that, try this, do that. And sometimes I've been temporarily successful and then other times not. And I think most recently, what I realized, this past summer before you and I started coaching was that if I really longitudinally look backwards at how much time I have served in this prison, it was heart-stopping for me. I mean, just thinking about how much I've thought about this in the last 25 years. And so that was sort of the evolution, the awareness that this is not how I want to spend the second half of my life, right? Surely there has to be other things to think about that I want to think about, that I have the brain space and capacity to think about. But I wasn't letting myself think about those things because it was like this all-consuming thought process that I had. And so I still to this day do not know, cannot explain, other than to say hokey things like the universe and energy and all that stuff, which I'll spare you from. But why, how, and when I chose to try coaching. I have never done it before. It felt new. It felt weird. I didn't know what to expect. And I somehow met you. And so here I am, I guess almost 8 or 9 months later, having first met you and sitting here having a podcast with you. It's crazy. Crazy.
Well, Yeah, and I wanted to invite you onto the show because I think that you are such a beautiful example of the before to the after of coaching and what happens on the other side of success. Now, in all truthfulness, right, you have not gotten to your quote unquote goal weight, but you're pretty freaking close.
I am. And what's interesting is that, oh gosh, and if I had heard myself say what I'm about to say 9 months ago, I would have I rolled all across around the entire earth. I would have just, oh, she's that girl. But what I'm about to tell you is that um, I kind of don't really think about the goal anymore as being weight. For me now, the goal is mindfulness, and the goal is health and being aware of my thoughts and what I do, what I don't do, how I feel. I mean, and sure, of course, I would love my weight to be, X, Y, or Z, but it's just not the centerpiece of my table anymore. It has a seat at the table. I'm not going to tell you it doesn't, but it's not like front and center. And I don't know how that happens. I mean, I do, but I don't. Meaning, I was talking to one of my girlfriends. I'm like, it feels like magic or like wizardry or like a secret, like this. How did this happen? And really, it's just, for me, it's been just sitting with my own thoughts and observing myself, and certainly having you to do that with, obviously.
Yeah. So let's go back to when you were 18. That's when
Mhm.
you first remembered going on a diet. Is that right?
Yeah. And being aware of how my body looked relative to my peers, whether that was quote worse or quote better,
Mhm.
but just the awareness. Yes. So
Mhm.
it went back. That's about when I remember that, roughly when I went to college, I would say, and had to kind of quote fend for myself with respect to food and how I was going to get it, where I was going to get it, what I was going to eat, that sort of thing.
Yeah. And so do you remember the first diet that you went on?
Oh, that's a great question. You know, um, I want to say it wasn't really a fad diet. It was
Uh-huh.
more about restricting, what I was eating. It's certainly, back then, it wasn't about macro or micronutrient deprivation. It was more, oh, just eat less. That was the time where we had snack wells and fat free this, fat free that. That's right. It's all coming back. So I remember that was a big thing. Yeah, yeah, paying $12 for four fat-free cookies or something ridiculous like that. And thinking you were thinking I was doing the right thing and doing right by my body. I remember that.
Yeah. And I remember that was when the whole low fat thing came out, right?
Totally. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And thinking that, yeah, Snackwell cookies were actually better for us than
Yeah.
I don't know what.
I don't even know what. Right.
So then you continually started dieting after that, or what happened between 18 and 46?
Yeah. Um, so several things. One was just life and life stage. In college, I was, in a rigorous college with rigorous academics, and oftentimes there was a lot of late night studying and a lot more, eating, a lot more weird eating, 2 a.m. eating, 4 a.m. eating, whatever the case may be. And then, kind of quote outgrew that. And then there would be work, or there would be, kids, or whatever it was. My point is I felt like I never had a sense of why I was always on this 20-pound roller coaster of weight. I oftentimes would joke, but not really, that every even year I would be 20 pounds overweight, and every odd year I would be 20 pounds back to quote normal. Um, and like I said, so that really meant every other year that I was feeling well at whatever weight that was, I kind of wasn't thinking about it in big fat quotes as much. Um, and then when I would gain the weight, it would be despair and confusion, anger, all this strange emotions that I would feel at the time. But really, like I said before, that longitudinal 20 years of time resulted in this prison of just, when am I going to break free? How can I? It wasn't even when, it was how can I break free? I have tried everything I know to try to do. What am I missing? And I remember actually thinking that right before I met you, when I kind of thought about coaching, was what am I missing? I am an intelligent, well-read, well-educated individual who's largely well integrated in life, relatively happy. I mean, there's no big tragic story. There's no trauma. There's no, there's, and I almost felt like for those people that have had difficult upbringings or tragedy or trauma, or I could kind of wrap my mind around, oh, well, that makes sense why that person's having, but for me personally, and I can only speak for myself, obviously, it actually confounded the picture for me. Like, well, then why the hell can't you get it together? What's the issue? What are you missing? Because at that point, I knew too much, almost information overload about how I was supposed to treat my body, or I was supposed to eat, or supposed to work out. But really, I knew nothing. I mean, I knew a lot, but I knew nothing, if that makes sense. So I knew that I'm missing something. I had no idea what it was. I just knew I was missing something. And that's how I felt right before I met you.
Yeah. And I remember when we did our initial consult that you were talking about how you had had these periods of like clean eating where you would be on track. And then you seemed to be at a loss of like, well, why do I sabotage myself?
Yes.
Like, what happens? Like, I'm doing really well. I feel good. And then something happens and I can't seem to recover from it.
Yeah. Yes. That's absolutely right. What I realized is that I was implementing a lot of some very good things, but was absolutely missing a foundation, the critical part of health and understanding and wellness. And none of that was read on the back of a nutritional label. None of that could be found on WebMD. None of that could be found. Like, it was something else. And so I kind of felt like I was building this house of cards. I've got my framing up and I've got my this, my that, but I had no foundation the whole time. And so every time the house would come crumbling down, because children happened or marriage happened, or, not bad things, but just things, then there was no stable foundation. And so, the framing would just fall apart. And then I never figured out that there was never a foundation. And I think in retrospect, that was the missing piece that I did not realize. It's interesting looking back.
So tell me, what do you think your foundation is at this point then?
So on a slightly more superficial level, a lot of the things that, I learned from you, which sounds so trite and so basic. It's almost like, really, that's the answer. But truly, it started with, drinking water, half of my body weight in ounces of water. I know, I feel your audience eye rolling right now. I can feel it. And I'm eye rolling kind of, and eating, 4 to 6 vegetable servings a day, and, moving my body. And honestly, at this age, not in a way where I'm sore every single day or I'm gassed and I can't help my daughter do homework at the end of the night. Like, not in that way, but just more natural movement. So sure. Okay. So those were some basic things that I really needed to reintroduce myself to, i.e. I knew them. They're indisputably good things to do for myself, but I somehow wasn't implementing it. And you know why I wasn't? I didn't actually know or believe its value. Sure, of course it's great to drink water. No one is going to tell you it's not, right? Of course it's good. But there was always something in the back of my mind, really? That's the answer? Come on. Have you seen the 20 pounds? Like, that's not going to make a difference. I didn't actually buy in, even though I knew little, quote, little, but super big things like that. So those were some of the parts of the foundation. And then really for me, the biggest part was really getting a handle on the thoughts that I have about food, the thoughts that I have about myself and my relationship with food, um, believing that I am capable of having a healthy body, and that's not necessarily weight driven, but to some degree it is. So I think that was the hard work. I always thought that counting calories and being in a negative balance was the hard work. I mean, and that's not to minimize the effort of that. It's just I have done that and it wasn't working. So what, and I think that that's really what has changed. In addition to a lot of the behavioral things that I alluded to before with the water and the vegetables and all that, but just really slowing down and sitting in this process, as painful and annoying as it is and was. You said something at the beginning when you were introducing me, which was something about the before and the after, or how it was, and now sitting afterwards with the success. And I just want to say that there's no full stop at the end of that. It's ongoing for me, as I'm sure for everyone. I feel like what I have come out of is not, oh my God, I reached my goal weight, or oh my God, now I know how to lose weight. It's not that. It's more self-trust and a renewed belief system, and really understanding that for me, it always felt like there was a timeline. I was looking back at some of my old journal entries, and there were so many things I'd be like, well, by this day, or, oh, I feel like it's taking too long, or, oh, I'm putting forth all this effort and nothing's happening. And I think releasing myself from that expectation or that timeline with respect to weight loss was enormously helpful for me. But it was a process. It certainly didn't happen overnight.
Yeah. And we're definitely going to come back to self-trust, because I know that was something that was really huge for you. Like, how do I go out to dinner and not eat the entire menu?
Yeah.
So you were used to counting calories. And for a period of time when we were learning about the hunger scale and learning to build self-trust through the hunger scale and eating an appropriate amount of calories, you were still logging your food in tandem. And so let's talk about that a little bit. So how did that go?
So I had previously never known of a weight loss journey that didn't involve tracking food logging, calories, calorie deficit, calorie surplus. I mean, look, I'm not disputing science. I understand that in and out and all that. I get it. We all do at this point. I mean, we're inundated with that culture, right? So I'm not trying to debunk that. What I am saying is that in my quest to break free out of prison, that, just to painfully keep analogizing, that was like solitary confinement within the prison. It was worse. I mean, it was just, in a weird way, food logging was my security blanket. I'm extraordinarily data driven. I love seeing numbers. I like seeing things turn green. I get panicked when things turn red. I mean, right. But, and that is, my Fitness Pal, which happened to be the app I was using for years, using that on and off. I mean, I've got data going back to 2012, I think. So it was my security blanket. It felt right. It felt rooted in science. It felt comforting to me. What I realized, though, is it also brought me a lot of anxiety, and it brought me shame, and it brought me feeling like a failure. It brought me a lot of negative sensations that really didn't help me in the long run. What it did was it scared me into eating less the next day and made me feel bad about going over and those numbers turning red. And on the flip side of the coin, I derived all kinds of smug satisfaction when my numbers were in the green. I mean, it was like this crazy, merit and demerit system that I was sort of indentured to. And I and I find my own word choices interesting. Indentured, prison. I mean, it's like I'm working the chain gang here. But I just it just and I'd love to be able to tell you that it was this moment where I was like, oh my God, it had to do with the process of, and never once did you tell me, oh my gosh, don't food log. But I know in retrospect, you were always thinking in the back of your mind, someday she's not going to need to food log. Someday she's not going to want to food. You never said it at the time. I had to get there on my own. And it just, and listen, it had its place. Let me just say that it had its place in this entire journey that stems back from, 20 years ago. It had its place. I learned from it. I learned a lot about it, actually, about myself, about calories. So I just, and not to sound condescending, I just feel like I've outgrown that, if that makes any sense. Yeah. So I remember the first 1 week that you were like, hey, maybe why don't you just try it? And I was like, what? Try not food logging? Why don't you have me go eat a dozen donuts while you're at it? Like that, that's about as well as that's going to go. So it was scary to not do it. And of course I had like magical thinking associated with like, oh my gosh, well, if I don't do it, well, surely I'm going to gain 5 pounds this week. I mean, all kinds of crazy thoughts, and none of that happened. And I can't even tell you what my username and password is now for that app.
Well, and I remember the turning point of when you kind of made the transition to maybe this isn't right for me. It was the Sunday before we had met. Something had happened where you had eaten out or had leftovers because it was during COVID. And then you went on one of your, what you called tchotchke binge eating, which is when she would go around and just pick at different foods. And after she logged it, she had 100 calories left for the day. And it was only 1:00 in the afternoon.
Oh, the despair.
Right?
And then, it's also like, let me see if I can trick myself and not log the tchotchkes. And then maybe she and me in third person will forget. And it doesn't count, right? If I don't log it, it doesn't count. And then there's the super ego that's like, well, you have to log it. That's the whole point of this. If you don't log it, then don't even bother doing it. And it was just this battle within myself. And I just realized it just wasn't helping me anymore. It helped me short term or for the day or for the hour, but I can't even tell you the despair one feels when you realize you have 100 calories left at 1 p.m. Mm-hmm. And I felt like, who says? I'm annoyed by that. I don't know what or who. I imagined, whomever, like a puppeteer with the fitness pal, like, oh, who is she to tell me that I can't eat more than 100 calories for the rest of the day? So it just made me feel awful and scared. Yeah. I mean, scared. My fitness pal was making me feel scared on the days that I didn't, quote, do well. I just realized in that moment, I can't do this anymore. I don't want to do this. There has to be a different way. Yeah. I just can't do this.
Well, and it's crazy when you think about it that some computer program is going to tell you what the right number of calories are correct for your body.
Right. And not even a computer app, but a lot of what we read, a lot of what we see, a lot of what fitness experts tell us, a lot of what, really, really, really well-meaning, really, really educated people tell us. Right. So it's not just that. For me, the app reinforced in a little handheld device on demand what everybody else was telling me. And I bought in. How do you not buy in? Yeah. Right. And like I said, I don't want to vilify my fitness pal. It has its merits for me. It had merits for me. But in that moment that you're referring to, I realized that it's no longer helpful for me. There's something more different, that I need to explore, because this is not it. I have reached end game with my fitness pal.
Right. There's because I think that logging your food can be helpful for us to be aware of what is in our food.
Totally.
But once you have that knowledge, then I don't know that you really need it anymore.
Yeah. I had to discover that the hard way,
Yeah.
completely. It took that instance and many, many others that I wasn't consciously aware of, all building up to that 1 p.m. fateful hour, where it's like, this is not right. This is not right for me, I should say, any longer.
Yeah. And so that was really the first step towards self-trust for you, was learning how to eat to the hunger scale, understanding how food made you feel.
In hindsight, that was the first step. At the time, it did not feel like that. It felt like I was free falling with no parachute. Let's just be clear. I did not feel at that time, well, let's just rely on myself. No, it was, what the hell am I going to do now? I know that doesn't work, which is well and good and a nice data point to have. But the second part of that is, well, now what? Right? It was not, let's just rely on myself. But again, to your point, in hindsight, absolutely. That was the first moment where I think that seed germinated. I just didn't see it at the time.
Yeah. And do you remember what your next step was?
Oh gosh. I don't. I might be repressing it. I feel like you might remind me. I don't know.
Well, so it was, I think what you were doing was you were sending me pictures of your food.
Yes, that's right. That's right. Oh my gosh, that's right. Oh, and I laugh maniacally because I know what I'm going to say. So right. So you're like, well, why don't we, because I did feel like a free fall. And I think you offered that to me as a, look, I don't want you to feel that way. Why don't you, just so there's some sense of accountability or whatever, text me your food, like whatever you put in your mouth, just text me.
Yeah.
And so I did. And I enjoyed it at first, because it was nice to transition from the MyFitnessPal to still some accountability, minus all of the overly positive and overly negative, things. So the transition was nice, but that too wasn't sustainable in the long run. I can't indefinitely be sending you pictures of what I'm eating.
Yeah, but the issue was that you were eating the same things over and over and over again. So
like over and over.
Right. You had like 5 different meals that you felt
you're
safe
being generous. Yeah, maybe
eating.
4. I mean, it right. Absolutely. And to the point where I think I was copying and pasting the previous week's food. I'm like, really? We're going to take another picture of the whatever it was. Why not just copy and paste from 2 days ago? And I did. And that was such a huge. Oh, and I do want to say, what's happening alongside all of this is the subtext of me weighing myself, right? So while I did away with MyFitnessPal, I was also freaking out about what's going to happen on the scale, right? So then I'm now sending you pictures, and I now am, and then guess what? I lost a pound or 2. I don't even know. So then I latch on to what I'm eating now as the Willy Wonka golden ticket, right? Yeah. Aha! I know what I need to eat now because I'm getting positive returns on the scale. And so therefore, what that did was paralyzed me into not deviating from what I was eating, because why fix it if it's not broken? And what I'm talking about is the weight loss on the scale. Like, it's working. Why are we messing with it? So I didn't want to mess with it. Mm-hmm. And you suggested I mess with it.
Well, I think that the problem is that you were plateauing. Like, your weight loss journey was that you would plateau for like 4 weeks and then lose like 2 or 3 pounds, and then plateau for like 6 weeks and then lose. Right?
Yeah. Yeah. And at the time it felt like torture. At the time, sometimes I just laughed, like literally laughed when I would get on the scale and it was the same, because and I have to say, I think earlier on in the Plateaus, and I'm sure a lot of people can relate to this, I'm drinking my water, I'm eating my vegetables, I'm moving my body, I'm eating what I feel like I should be eating. It was working 2 weeks ago. Well, what changed? I don't understand. It was working. I did drop and I'm doing the same exact thing now. Like, why am I not losing weight? Um, and sure, one could say, well, you're probably eating the same in as you're putting out. And it was so much more than that. I thought, and I, sometimes I do still think, it's not to that degree, but that if I'm doing something way X right now and I'm getting the results that I want, then if I keep doing way X, it's going to keep going. When it didn't, that's when everything I had been learning or ways I had been feeling changed, not for the better, meaning feeling despair, feeling resentful, feeling angry. Well, I'm sacrificing this, that, and everything else. And if the scale's not going to move, well, then, screw it. I don't want to do it. Or why am I doing this? Or the process isn't working. Or, all of those thoughts would flood my brain. And, you know, and I know, you and I would talk about, well, what different thought can you have? Right. Like, you get on the scale, it says, whatever number it's the same number it said 4 weeks ago. Now what? And I was able to see that my thoughts would be, something negative, something defeatist in nature or whatever. And then I would feel terrible about myself.
Right.
And then I would once again have, oh, well, screw it. Just eat.
Mm-hmm.
And then guess what? The weight on the scale would go up. And then I would feel defeated. And then I would feel upset. I mean, so there was one point in my journaling where I was actually trying to reframe my thoughts. I got on the scale said the same thing on week 5. And I felt good about the things I was doing, irrespective of the number on the scale. And I laughed out loud. And the thoughts that I had were, this isn't working. And I can't define what it is, but how I was living my life wasn't working. So I remember thinking, all right, well, what is a different thought you can have about this number that feels right for you? You've talked about it in your previous podcasts. And the thought that I came up with, which at the expense of sounding heinously melodramatic, was life-changing for me in this process, which was, maybe this plateau is part of your process. Look, it's not an earth-shattering thought, but for me, it was seismic because I had never previously thought about a weight that I didn't quote like or was disappointing to me in those terms, which is, okay, that's the number. Okay, this is part of my process. This slow plateau is necessary for my permanent change. And every time, and there were so many times afterwards where the weight would be the same, and that would start to be the automatic thought, slowly but surely. It wouldn't be even me needing to reframe, reshift. It would literally be, okay. I mean, I can almost hear the tone in my head being more positive, right? When you talk to yourself, okay, this is part of your permanent change. This is the way you are supposed to do it, is go through these long periods of plateau. And that was life-changing in terms of how I viewed the process. And the whole, the adage, hurry up and go nowhere. I needed to not hurry up. Where am I going? Sometimes nowhere on the scale. So what's the urgency? And a lot of that is I'm putting in the effort. I want it now. I want it now. I want it now. But that wasn't part of my process to get it now, clearly, because now I am at a weight where I feel, more importantly, well about how I'm able to move and how I'm able to think about myself. And so I needed those plateaus. I think I've always told you that, I needed those plateaus. I needed those.
Well, and I remember having a conversation with you where we were talking about the urgency, because you were like, why isn't this happening? I want it tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
And realizing that life isn't going to be better when you've lost that weight. It's probably going to be pretty similar. Now, you were experiencing some physical symptoms of the weight, where you were having, I think, joint pain and just the heaviness and sluggishness.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And, I would be lying if I didn't say there was a vanity component to this at the beginning and that there was I want to look cute in that dress and oh my gosh, that dress doesn't fit. Of course. Of course. I mean, who doesn't want to feel nice or attractive or whatever that means to them. Right. So that was certainly a part of it. But yeah, it was, I don't feel well. Just basic. I don't feel well. And it was nothing earth shattering. I don't have any major medical problems. I'm relatively healthy on the inside for all intents and purposes. So it was just more, I don't feel well. And I'm positive I can feel better physically. I'm positive of that. How I'm going to get there, I don't know. When I'm going to get there, I don't know. But I know I will. I know I can. And you sent out a really great email to a lot of your clients and others, and it stuck with me through the plateau. We've talked about it before, but at this point, it's like, well, I've been doing all these things, right? I've been mindful, I've been journaling, I've been resisting the urge to berate myself and be negative, and forgiven myself for when I haven't eaten the way I know my body wants me to eat, etc. So when those plateaus would happen, or even if I just had a crazy food day, usually historically it would be like, well, screw it. It's not going to work. Just screw it. You screwed up the day, you screwed up the week, you screwed up the weekend, your weight went up on the scale, screw it. But this time around, where am I going? Like, what am I going to do? Stop drinking water? Stop eating vegetables? Stop taking a walk? Say to myself, you know what? Forget it. I want more processed food. I got to this point where I can't go backwards anymore. It's not that I can and I choose not to. Like, I'm literally telling you, I cannot go backwards for real.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know where that would be. I don't know where that would go to. Like, I don't hydrate my body anymore. Oh, okay. It's absurd.
Right. And I think that was kind of what kept you going through the plateau, was that
Absolutely.
you're like, well, even if I don't get to my weight, because we did a lot of coaching around that. Like, what if you don't get to this random goal that you set for yourself?
Right.
Like,
Right.
the set of habits that you were doing on a daily basis, if you never lost another pound, would you be okay with where you were?
Right. Exactly. And I think would I be okay to some degree is contingent upon where I am on the scale.
Mm-hmm.
Like, for example, I wonder, it's moot, but it's an interesting thought. Like, let's say I had never lost a single pound, but had incorporated all these great habits. Mm-hmm. But it's almost, I have to be honest, I find it hard to believe that one could, include all these great habits and not get to a weight that their body wants to be. I find that hard to believe. And that's, I think, what has sustained my efforts, is that if I just keep doing those things that make me feel good physically, everything else sort of falls by the wayside, whether that be donuts or whether that be kale. And it goes back to the foundation we're talking about. Like, I still do these certain things. So irrespective of what I'm eating or whose birthday it is, or, what we're celebrating or whatever, I'm still doing these things. And what I have found from my personal experience is, if I'm still doing these things, eating off script or having a strange eating weekend or whatever, has virtually no impact on the scale or on my physical well-being.
Yeah.
And that's been really eye-opening.
So as you were talking, I just kept thinking about the idea of self-love. So that kind of was happening in the background of this whole journey as well. Someone who loves and respects herself doesn't treat her body poorly, right? And
Right.
so through that journey, you learned how to have more respect for your body, right?
Yeah. And if we're being brutally honest, what I learned before that is I was deficient in that. I didn't have enough of it, and it's irrelevant. I mean, it's relevant, but not relevant to the podcast to go into why and how and whatever. But my point is, I was aware through the process that I didn't have enough of it. And what could I do to remediate that? Why, and a lot of it is, well, why not? And there was a lot of, introspection and private introspection about that. But without that, I found it hard to move forward in things like acquisition of physical health. And truly for me, it was feeling deserving. Do I deserve what makes me deserve to feel healthy and be healthy? And, that was somewhat painful to look into during the process because nobody wants to really have this awareness that, oh gosh, maybe you don't love yourself as much as you thought you did, or that others think you do, or how others love you. It's pretty eye-opening. And so, and don't get me wrong, I am not like a beacon of self-love today, but I certainly can tell you that I am more compassionate with myself, whether that means I ate a donut or I yelled at my kid or I screwed up at work. I mean, just in general. But it's hard. And I think if you're wired that way or have those thoughts in general, then it also makes acquisition of prime physical health hard too. So I would say that it's helped in a lot of different things, just having the thought process and being able to take inventory of my own self-worth, self-love, and amount of, how much do I deserve this? It's been eye-opening.
Well, and I think that self-love, self-loathing, self-doubt, and self-trust, they all kind of go together, right? I shouldn't say self-loathing and self-doubt in there, but like those are the antidotes. Those are the pieces that are keeping us from like really going into it and trusting ourselves, right? That self-love and self-trust go together. And as we're wrapping up, how do you feel as far as self-trust goes?
That's a good question. Like right off the bat, I can tell you I have infinitely more now than I did 9 months ago. I also know that in order to gain self-trust, I have to have little mini wins and victories along the way. There has to be, just blind self-trust is difficult for me. So I think what has happened is in tandem of, gaining self-trust was also competency and seeing that, oh, you really, you had an extravagant over the top dinner on Sunday night. I no longer say to myself, well, this week's a wash, shoot for the moon this week and we'll restart on May 1st. It's not like that anymore. But I had to have enough of those opportunities to put trust into the bank, where on a Monday morning, I just sort of said, hey, yes, Sunday was a bit much, but we're going to get back to drinking water. We're going to be mindful of our thoughts. So we're going to be doing what we usually do, business as usual, with respect to working out and how I eat. And sure enough, there was no weight gain on the scale. Sure enough, I felt well all week and I slept well all week. And those tiny points of data here and there in and of themselves didn't feel like much. But really, there were a lot of deposits made into the bank over time. So now when I, have a lot of birthday cake, probably maybe a little bit more than I should have or whatever, I'm not freaking out about it. I'm not dreading getting on the scale. I'm not worried about weight gain. I can't tell you the number of times we didn't have time to talk about it, but the number of times I gained weight in the process. And sure, it wasn't a 10-pound weight gain, but it was a weight gain. And how do I deal with that? It used to be, screw it, I don't want to do this anymore. And now it's no big deal. I believe my body will just do what it knows to do now. And it's true. So I think that's been very liberating, gaining the self-trust.
Yeah. And, you just said something that I don't know if I've really put it together before, which is like your self-trust was built inside your failures.
Yes.
And that is
absolutely.
So brilliant.
Yeah, totally. And I regard my failures as, at the time, the plateau on the scale for weeks on end.
Yeah.
I interpreted those things at the time as failures until my thoughts started to change. Or a weight gain as a failure, or off script eating day. And, and this isn't to, there were two choices in those moments. I stopped doing very basic fundamental things that make my body feel good and go back to whatever it was I was doing before, which I don't even remember. Or I keep going, like, to where? I don't know. When will I get there? I don't know. But it's a one-way train. I can't go backwards. I just don't know where that would go and what that looks like. So I think you're absolutely right that I personally learned the most about myself and actually found my self-trust in the difficulties and in the failures. And I found that surprising. Why? Because that's what we teach our kids, right? That's what you learn the most when you fail. I mean, but that's for children to tell your children. That doesn't apply to me. I don't learn crap when I fail. I learn it feels bad and I don't want it to happen again. That's what I think. But that's not true. I mean, for me in this process, I don't want a failure. But when I have a failure, to whatever capacity that is, it's okay. It's okay. I mean, what other option is there? It's not okay.
Well, and what I love about all of this, like putting it together, is that what you refused to do was give up. Like through the Plateaus, you could have given up and you didn't. You kept going. Through the failures, you could have given up, but you didn't. You kept going. And for all of the folks who are listening, you've done diets before and quote unquote failed. And so you've given up on those diets. But if you keep going, just like Annie, there's going to be one last time. And your past does not dictate your future. As long as you're able to listen or learn from what you went through and apply it going forward, then it wasn't really a failure.
Right. That's right. Yeah. I couldn't have said it better myself. It's absolutely true. At the time, even if it feels like a failure, because we all know what that feels like, there is something in there. And for me, I had to find it. And that's not to say I like them, I want them, or I want any more of them, but they'll be there. And I just have to find that part of the failure. It just can't mean going backwards for me anymore. It just can't. It's not an option.
Awesome. Anything else you want to share with the listeners today?
Oh gosh, no, not really. I just, thanks for listening. And Elizabeth's amazing. I know this is seriously from the heart. Like, I just can't, it's shocking to me just how much we've been able to do together. And I don't want to get weird and mushy on the podcast, but I truly, just having you reflect back onto me what I realized I've known all along, but didn't know, that's everything.
I adore you, and you have been a delight. And it's so sad because we are finishing up our contract within the next few weeks. So
yeah,
I'm going to miss seeing you, but you are a client for life. So,
oh, thank you.
All right. Thank you for being here. And thank you for sharing your story with everyone.
My pleasure.
All right.
Bye.
So there you have it. I love Annie's story so much because for her, giving up was not an option. As we were working together, I had recounted a story to her about our frustrations in purchasing our land in Mexico. We seemed to hit delay after delay after delay, but giving up was never an option for my husband and myself. We knew that this piece of land that we were going to buy was the thing that we wanted, and there really wasn't anything else that we did. And so when we would hit a snag, and there were a lot, we kept going. We didn't give up. And Annie took that metaphor to heart. She had lived the giving up story too many times before, and she was committed, shedding the thoughts and behaviors that just didn't serve her anymore. In the episode, we talked about self-trust and self-belief, belief in ourselves that we can accomplish what we set out, and belief that the goal that we set out is attainable. I want to report that after our interview, Annie texted me and she's moving towards monthly weigh-ins, whereas before she was weighing herself every day. And if there's something that shows both self-trust and belief in ourselves, it's that we can handle the what ifs, and moving towards eliminating the scale is purely evidence of that. And I want to offer that the byproduct of no longer paying attention to the scale, logging your food, or eating to a set of strict rules frees up so much headspace that you can have back. I hope you enjoyed my interview with Annie because she embodies what is possible. And so I want you to take that to heart and start believing in yourself. As long as you don't give up, you can do this too. Have a great week, everyone. I'll catch you next time. Bye-bye. Hey, thanks for listening. If you're done with dieting and would like to work with me as your coach, I'd like to invite you to reach out to myself and my team to ask about programs and pricing. Go to elizabethsherman.com/contact to get started today. I can't wait to hear from you. See you next week.